for your own copy. Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining, and thank you very much for Saskia and James for arranging this. It was very nice, and I always feel privileged to be asked to do things like this. So thank you very much for that, and I'm always extremely grateful to talk about something I'm so passionate about. So I'm going to just get us underway, and we can start. Cool. Great. So my name's Ollie. If you don't know already, I'm a London-based movement coach, and since stopping rugby professionally 5 years ago, I sort of delved deeper and deeper and deeper into human physiology, human biomechanics, human movement patterns, and it's simply just blown my mind. If I can just put it in those sort of simple words, and it's an ever growing journey for myself. It's something that has had a massive impact on my life personally, and also I've been fortunate enough to coach this philosophy and this type of training now for quite some years, and it's been very, very almost life changing actually since coming out of rugby in a quite a stressed state. So I guess the movement journey began for me when my mum took me to an all-girls dance class, which was quite interesting when I was 12. Lots of girls in leotards, and me and my best friend not in leotards. So I guess I was exposed to dance from a young age, and music, and both are such an important part of my life still to this day. And I was fortunate enough to play professional rugby from the age of 18 to 25. During that time, I did no stretching, I did no mobility, I did no movement training, I did no breath work. And I guess I was exposed to day in, day out, high levels of physical and mental stress. And you can kind of see me on the left looking a slightly different shape then. I was about 93 kilos and I'm about 82 now. So I've lost quite a lot of weight since rugby. And I guess I was kind of molded into this way, or I perceived I had to be this certain way. And I had lots of eating and sleep problems, and I was in a very stressed place really, but I didn't really know at the time. I was quite young, and obviously playing professional rugby, it was all the be all and end all, and couldn't see anything else past that. So I guess I grew up dancing. I was fortunate to dance in a good dance group called Two Faced, and did some cool things with them. Performed at the Fringe Festival, did lots of really cool stuff, and then sadly stopped when I was sort of 16 because rugby just completely took over. And I think theatre and dance, I think, were important for me because they opened my mind to different ways of movement and the softness of movement, and the integration of movement as well, which now, having relearned movement as an adult, especially as through the coach's lens, it's given me a different perception on movement as well. So I think martial arts, dance, they have a very good symbiosis together, and it's a very interconnected feeling through dance and martial arts and this way of moving, which I found so interesting. Stopped playing rugby six years ago, went into full-time sort of PT in a HIIT training gym in Clapham, and quickly realized that I found it was too much like rugby, very much like a quite an intense atmosphere for me. So I removed myself and I worked in a physio practice in Clapham, where I was very fortunate to meet a lot of special people. And that's when I really sort of started my journey into prehab and rehab and different types of movements, and the philosophies behind that as well. Go on. Okay, so going into what I believe in is important for a movement coach. I think if we just start on the left, I think personal standards in all aspects of our life, whether that's being the best we can at work and with us in our social environments is crucial. But I think when we're delving into becoming more of a movement practitioner, so to speak, it's this level of standards every day, and that's not the splits, that's not the press to handstand, that's not the high elite levels at all. It's doing the basics on a consistent basis, and that could be doing cat cows every day, or some hanging, or some squat routine work, and just really mixing up the type of training you do, which I guess leads on to the next pillar, which is to create your own unique style and your own movement style. So movement is this very elaborative, conducive thing which we can really mold to become our own. And I think the internet and Instagram, but certainly has provided us with all this amazing information which we can choose from. And I think our bodies are so different anatomically. And I think it's such an important aspect to create your own style, whether that's a mixture of, for me, I take inspiration from capoeira, from gymnastic strength training, from tricking, which is a bit of breaking in some aerial type movements, some floor-based work, or whether it's just normal sort of movements in general. But we can call these movements what we want. They are very much the same thing. We label things, I think, sometimes to put things in the box, where movement is natural movement. I think it's the way the body is designed to move, and it's the way that the body is designed to experience different movement as well. And then coming on to continuous learning, I think this is obviously you guys are on this tonight, which is great. And, I feel very privileged to be able to speak about this to you. And I think continuous learning for myself has been massive, and whether that's going on more courses or reading more books or speaking to like-minded people or building your network around your passion, and being open to accept that you don't know everything, which we will never know everything, and that you don't know every system, and that to be the beginner and be vulnerable. And that's such an important part of, I believe, becoming a coach in general, but also particularly a movement coach, when you're more vulnerable in terms of your body positions and you have to let go more to experience different things. Basic movement literacy, I guess that kind of ties into personal standards, but I think as a movement coach, I think it's important that we practice what we preach. So that's doing your spinal work every day, that's doing your stretches, and that's doing your different ways of stretching, and that's really building a very wholesome way of movement yourself. And that's the way then we can integrate that with our coaching, or how we pass it on to friends or family. Even if you're not a coach on this tonight, I think we can still help someone experience more movement, less pain, less restriction through moving their bodies in the most natural way. Daily rituals. I guess this has been a big part of the work I've kind of integrated with myself, and the t-shirt I'm wearing is my passion, which is I run with my friend Elliot, and it's called the Human Program, which is a holistic lifestyle business. And one of the things we really pride ourselves on is having these daily rituals, and that's your gratitude, so expressing your gratitude to the world, but also to yourself. And then it's coming on things like the breath, and then the movement, and then the environmental conditioning. So all these pillars every day, and they don't have to be these overwhelming tasks. And that's picking 5 minutes out of your day to do a breath practice, or that's picking a couple of minutes to do some gratitude, or that's doing some cold showers more often. And all these things are such an important aspect, I think, to becoming and feeling more like a human. And will only transpire into your coaching or your movement repertoire. And then the last one, which we'll talk about more today in more detail, is breath control. And it's a massive area which I'll talk about as we go through. This is a slightly this is a way, I think, these things which I'm going to talk about now are things which are personal to you. And I think that even when I'm going to talk now, I think this is based on my experience and my beliefs in the different elements of these certain areas of thinking and psychology. And I always, you can link it to anything, whether it's movement or life or anything. And I think one of the big things for me is always being self-expressive. And I think we are very unique in our makeup, not just physically, but mentally. And I think it's movement and the way we live our life is a very nice way to be self-expressive. And that's being an individual. And that doesn't mean that you're purposely trying to be a different person. It's really being yourself. And one of the other things which is been very important to me is non-dualistic thinking. And that comes on to that there's no you and me, or that's not get to the top of the mountain and that's not, oh, you're on the other side and I'm not, so you must be better than me and I'm not. And it's having no judgment towards things. And it's a skill which I'm constantly reminding myself of. And I think in a world where we are conditioned to believe that we're not good enough all the time is hard. And it's to build your own self-belief and to not let yourself doubt yourself at all. And this non-dualistic way of thinking is a more open way of thinking. And it takes time, and it's always a constant daily reminder to myself personally, and for the people who I value very much. And it's a very much an awareness, perceptual thing for sure. And then coming on to empowerment, I think as coaches or humans, either we have a duty, I think, to empower people, and whether that's the smallest thing from show gratitude to more people, or a selfless act of kindness, to really being part of someone's journey to helping them achieve their goals, is always, I think, such an important part of life, and to give and to give back. Passion and purpose. So knowing what your passions are and what your purpose is crucial. So I think for me, it was hard after rugby because I had to accept I probably wasn't good enough to carry on professionally. And I was in this stage of, I think I should be good, I shouldn't be good. And I think it was only a bit of a self-realization that I probably wasn't good enough to carry on. So I chose the decision to stop and then find my new passion, which I'm very thankful for now. And compassion, obviously, is very important to show love to people, and a willingness and care for as many things as possible is vital. A wholeness approach, and this can be relatable definitely to training and your life, and it's to not look at one thing as one thing, and it's to look slightly wider or slightly broader out of the slightly narrower vision that I think a lot of us can get into in this. And it's a way in fitness and health which is very much closed-minded, and it's a very dogmatic approach, and it's a very, you must do this, or it's an A to Z, or these are the best stretches, or these are the best ways to move, or this is the right way. And when you go deeper into yourself, you realize that there is no right or wrong way in anything you do. And I think that having a more open mind to things and to learn as many different things as you can, especially if it's towards fitness and health, is very important, because you can offer yourself and also people you're coaching much more options around this. Self-awareness, and I think this is a personal thing. I think from my experience, it's always been aware of your decision to react or not react, and in most cases to never try and react at all. It's easier said than done, but it's a constant reminder. Again, it's daily work on yourself, and it's how you would like to be perceived to the outside world. And I think this is a very important thing for everyone to be more aware of. And I think a lot of us aren't self-aware, and we make decisions out of jest and anger and fear, and these things then translate to poor external action. So it's very much a mindset thing, and it's very much your thoughts are real, and it's very much you're telling yourself that you are this strong and positive person. And it's as soon as you have this thought go into your head, it's your ability to change that quickly. And again, this is constant work, and it's something I have to work on a lot myself. But they're my personal values, and these are the things we try and encourage on the human program. And definitely when I come into contact with people or I'm coaching people, these are the things I'm trying to get the most out of myself and with them. And we click on. So we're just going to go a little bit more into the movement. So movement is a goal-directed behavior that allows a person to maintain a particular posture or transition to other postures or sustain a given action until a desired endpoint is reached. Almost all movement has a goal-directed outcome. Achieving this outcome requires a complex integration of the various biological systems within the body, which we can divide into four main categories. Biochemical, so that's all the chemical reactions which take place in the body. Biomechanics, which is the forces which act upon the body. Physiological, so that's the various systems such as the muscular system, the respiratory system, and the central nervous system. And psychological, so how the mind is influenced by movement. And when movement is impeded for any reason, someone's ability to move is hindered. it is often because one or more things is happening within these categories, either in isolation or unison. The human body is such a complex organism whereby one thing will always affect another thing. It is very rare that one of these categories will not have an effect somewhere else in the body. I think, again, this goes back to not having a dogmatic approach or having a slightly narrow mind to where you coach or where you perceive things, because there's so many other factors going on within our bodies and minds that we can't see all the time. And I think just to take an impression of someone's physical movement or prowess is very narrow-minded, because even if someone's excelling greatly, I think to use examples of high-level ballet or high-level gymnastics, they look like they're completely in control, but internally they are sometimes very, very stressed. So it's finding that balance, and also it's not just believing what you see. And we're going to talk about breath tonight, which is a very, very personal subject to me. I did some before, actually, because I was actually feeling a little bit anxious before this, which is good because I feel like it's a good excitement. I think if I didn't feel any emotion towards tonight, it wouldn't be a normal thing as well. So I actually did some breath work before, and it's the fastest way I found to get into a calm state. And you cannot talk yourself into a calm state. The most effective way to get into a calm state of mind is to breathe effectively. So the brain exercise is the greatest power in humankind, but the air supplies the sense to it. And I think as coaches and as humans, our functional breathing aims are how can we breathe to increase oxygen uptake in the blood? How can we breathe today in a calm and collected state as much as possible? How can we breathe to increase blood circulation to open up the airways? And hopefully you guys know a little bit about the power of nasal breathing. If you don't worry whatsoever. But mouth breathing, so when we habitually use our mouth to breathe, when we have a very high breathing rate and our chest is, quite evident that we're breathing into our upper chest. Mouth breathing uses 30% more energy to the working muscles, fatiguing the breathing muscles. And it's a very common one, I think, with people that their thoracic spine, their thorax, which encases the rib cage, is very, very stiff. And you can do thoracic extension, you can do thoracic rotation, you can do side bends, you can do neck rotation, you can do everything around the area to help overcome these symptoms. And the one big elephant in the room is the breathing. And if that person isn't breathing properly or efficiently, then it will have a really detrimental effect, and it will have long-lasting effects to their thoracic stiffness, their neck tightness, their overall tension, which they feel on a daily basis. So heavy breathing is around 10 to 12 breaths per minute, and more therapeutic breathing is around 6 to 8. And I think we're never going to really get into 6 to 8 unless we're so aware the whole time. But if we can try and breathe slower, and I'm talking really fast now, so I'm mouth breathing a lot, but if you're sat there now, just try and practice not using the mouth to breathe and feel your whole physiology change. So mouth breathing usually means chest breathing. And as coaches, we often see clients and students which are stuck in a barrel chest position. So it's like this, breathe, and they can't get out of it, and they can't let go. And it's not because of their anatomical shape or their curvature of their spine. It's more often not because they're holding huge amounts of internal stress. Mouth breathing increases the offload of CO2, which is a metabolic stress messenger. Poor CO2 tolerance will stimulate the fight or flight reflex unconsciously. So the more we breathe like this, the more we go into fight and flight, and the more we go into, ready to attack the bear, or we're going to survival mode the whole time. And if we're habitually in this fight and flight state, we really don't give ourselves a good time at kind of recovering, thinking clearly. Our cognition's weak. So it's a really, really, really simple way to get into a parasympathetic branch of the nervous system, of the autonomic nervous system. And that's our way we can calm ourselves, and our thoughts and the way we perceive things are much different. And carbon dioxide, I think growing up in science, we were always believed that carbon dioxide was a waste gas, and we now know that it's not a waste gas whatsoever. And breathing hard, we get rid of a lot of carbon dioxide, and that constricts the blood vessels. And we need red blood cells to release O2 into the working tissues and organs, and the catalyst for the release of oxygen through the capillary walls back into the tissues and organs is CO2. So if we don't have a good relationship with breathing, we're just going to get tight, tonic tightness, inflammation, and so on. This is a really good test to do, which I think we might do as a group now. Actually, I think if everyone wants to switch their camera on, I'll just going to talk everyone through it first. This guy's really cool. I would definitely recommend looking him up. He's a brilliant breath pioneer, actually, and he's done some amazing stuff. He's got some amazing books. And he's developed a test called the body oxygen level test, or the BOLT score, and it is an assessment used by Patrick to determine relative breathing volume during rest and breathlessness during physical exercise. With the BOLT, you hold your breath until you feel the first natural desire to breathe. This isn't a breath hold test. This is a thing you do before you release the nose once you feel like you need to breathe. So it's not a willpower test. And by doing the breath hold this way, you take away things that can influence the test, like willpower, determination, etc. So to perform the BOLT, I think we've all been chilling for the last sort of 25 minutes, so we should be feeling quite relaxed. So it's very simple. I'm going to stop the share in a second, and you're just going to breathe in through your nose. You're going to breathe out through your nose, and then you're going to pinch your nose. And then I'm going to start the timer, and then we're going to go from there, and then we'll see what we get as a group. And please don't worry what your score is. It's your individual score, personal to you. And this is a marker which you can go up against. So I'm just going to stop my share so I can have a little rest and talking. And then I'll let you guys have a go. So I'm going to count everyone in. It's probably going to be a little bit easier that way. So I'm just going to tell you again. So you breathe in, you breathe out, pinch your nose, hold your mouth, and hold your breath as long as you comfortably can. And that's it. All right. So 3. So if everyone breathes in now through the nose, breathe out through the nose, pinch the nose, and the timer starts now. When you feel the first natural desire or urge to breathe, you're just going to let go of the nose and stop there. So that's 10 seconds. And again, don't try and get into competition with people. Don't gulp. Don't swallow. That's 18. Okay, that's 20. 22. All right, I think we're done. Cool. Right. Back on. So what do the results mean? So regardless of what you got today, it's irrelevant because it's about your own personal journey with the breath. And on average, most people are somewhere around the 20-second mark if they exercise regularly. Anything lower than 20 seconds, there's a good chance the individual may experience frequent blocked or stuffy nose, coughing, wheezing, disrupted sleep, snoring, fatigue, and excessive overbreathing at rest. And I think people often who have asthma or they've suffered a quite traumatic experience, this definitely is a long-lasting thing, and it's a thing which doesn't just happen from, again, just you've got this low BOLT score, so off you go and just breathe, because that's not going to work. It's going to take time and patience, and something which we don't do very well is having patience. So it's something definitely to be aware of. When you have a low BOLT score, your breathing's noisy, loud, heavy, and irregular. A good score, a really good score is 40. I mean, I'm nowhere near 40, to be honest. It's to do breath holds. I think swimmers are exceptional breath holds. We can, if you're not a swimmer or you don't do hypoxic training, you can still obviously improve your breath holds tremendously. And I'll talk to you a little bit more how you can do that as well. The urge to breathe is caused by a buildup of CO2 in the blood and a lack of oxygen in the blood when you perform the bolts. The length of your breath hold is influenced by how much carbon dioxide you're able to tolerate. So by increasing your ability to tolerate the buildup of CO2 and through breathing exercises in your internal state, you are able to maintain calm breathing during rest and lighter breathing during exercise. So your efficiency, especially with the aerobic system, is great, and also has massive benefits to your anaerobic system as well. But having your mouth closed as much as you can, you are essentially using the old school gas mask, which is on our faces already. So we're having all the benefits of that at rest. So I'll come on to ways you can do that, really simple ways where you go for a walk or some light exercise, but you're basically sneaking in more fitness and more physiological benefits from just simply using the nose to breathe. I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the postural side of nasal breathing. So nasal breathing requires a better engagement and position of the diaphragm. So as the diaphragm pulls down, the rib cage will expand, and this will really enable your breathing mechanics to improve. And the more we can get our rib cage to expand naturally versus vertically, you're going to allow more airflow in and around your rib cage. The more airflow it passes in and around your body, the more oxygenated tissue we're going to have, the more blood's going to go to our brain, the quicker and the faster recovery we're going to have if we're doing strength training or physical exercise. Just the benefits are second to none. This allows the organs to sit comfortably where they are supposed to. A more upright posture leads to more energy, more confidence, less neck tension, and overall increased body awareness. And as mentioned before, ideally the rib cage and the thorax will move independently of the spine. And I guess it's the kind of, we have this ideology of joints that they're quite stuck. I mean, we know obviously the hip's mobile, the shoulder's are mobile as it's the most mobile joint in the body, but we still think that our scapula, for example, and our rib cage are stuck, and they're not. They're freely movable joints, and they should be able to move. They should be able to rotate and articulate as well. And breathing really puts the brakes on that. Nasal breathing stimulates the vagus nerve. Vagus or vagal nerve is from Latin, and it's a nerve, or it's a Latin word for wandering, because it's a wandering nerve which wanders all through your body, and it's connected to your diaphragm. And this amazing nerve is connected to the heart, lungs, and guts, and that's why the brain-gut connection is heavily linked to the vagus nerve. Low vagal activity are often signs of chronic fatigue, gut issues, poor breathing mechanics, and as mentioned, it's linked to the diaphragm, and it's your fastest way to go into a calm state. And when you do things like massage, or you hug someone, or you show like lots of emotion, or really happy, your vagus nerve will be stimulated. And I think if we can stimulate the vagus nerve more, we're probably going to be a little bit happier as well. So we can do that very simply from breathing slower, breathing lower, and keeping our mouths closed. And it's really that simple. And I think if you can find more space in your head, and you can do meditation as well on top of this, it's a gateway to relaxation. I mean, when I do lots of meditation, I feel like I'm just having like a holiday. Like I don't always get into that nice state, because if I'm busy, I sometimes still struggle to switch off even when I'm meditating. However, when I do get into good states personally, and in my experience, you go into a very transcendent state of consciousness where you can really relax. And it's very rare, unless we're on a beach and there's no one around us and we've got a cocktail, that we're completely relaxed. I don't think we're ever completely relaxed, especially I live in a city and it's busy, and you could probably hear the motorbike at the start of the session, and you're always on this high alert reflex the whole time. And I think if we can use the breath and meditation to get into this calmer state of mind, we can offset our day-to-day life or our stresses or the environment which we're in a lot. Simultaneous and symmetrical co-activation of the diaphragm, abdomen, back, and pelvic muscles will allow a greater interconnection between the breathing pattern and postural stabilization. And using your breath and using the diaphragm more efficiently, you're gonna have great effects internally, externally, physically, mentally. So it's something to really do already if you're not already doing. Nasal breathing will increase the production of nitrogen dioxide, which is a colorless gas. The main role of NO is to act as a vasodilator, opening up the soft tissue and blood vessels as a result of lowering blood pressure. And this all happens from nasal breathing. NO is a free radical, and it helps pump more blood around the body. It helps warm the air as it comes into the nose. It acts as a filter against bacteria, obviously, especially relevant and prevalent at the moment. Nasal breathing alone can boost nitric oxide sixfold, so meaning we can absorb around 20% more oxygen by just using the nose to breathe. And just a little bit about when you can use your mouth. You're not banned from using the mouth at all. Preparation for action stimulates over breathing and raising the pH levels in the blood for readiness for action. This is fine provided physical exertion takes place. So, doing high level activity, and even you can, when you really get into your breath holes, and I'll come on to the step count later on, and you can almost layer your mouth, so you can go, so you can understand your offload of carbon dioxide dependent on the level of activity you're doing. And this is hard, especially if you're doing something new like movement. You need a lot of your energy, you need a lot of your focus, and a lot of that will be mouth breathing. But if you're doing something like stationary bike, or you're walking, or you're going for a jog or running, it's quite linear, there isn't a huge amount of motor control which needs to take place, then it's definitely a great way to practice nasal breathing while doing these activities. Vigorous activity increases the levels of lactate and CO2, making it physiologically appropriate to mouth breathe to switch the anaerobic system. High level skills and exertion, such as Olympic lifting, gymnastics, will all require this type of breathing. And if you're bracing for squats and things like that, the breath's going to be different again. So it's just being mindful of that. And I really don't believe, especially with those exercises specifically, there is a right and wrong way to breathe. I think finding out about your individual threshold, when and how you like to breathe in certain situations, is the most important thing, especially with training and performance. So I think that's such a wide area for people. Early wound repair requires fibroblasts or the production of collagen. And mouth breathing is present, which will stimulate collagen synthesis. So mouth breathing is important for early wound repairs and physical exertion. So some signs, I guess, that, if you're coaching, or, we have family members or friends, and we're picking up signs that they are heavy mouth breathers for whatever reason, whether that's emotional, psychological, physical, or a combination. It's, again, these are quite, I guess, dogmatic in a way, because, someone's spine might naturally be in cervical lordosis, which means they've got a forward tilted head posture. It doesn't mean they're a mouth chest breather, but it's an indication. If they've got chronic or hypertonic tissue tightness, so if you can touch your muscle tissue in most places and it's quite firm, then you're probably pushing yourself a bit too much, because your body, your tissue shouldn't feel tonic the whole time. So it's whether your nervous system's tightening up for whatever reason, this can relate to upper chest breathing. So that's tight back, or, as I spoke about, the elevated ribs, where the person is stuck in inspiration, and then there will be a restriction in lung fascia as a result. And I guess this is a way which you can help retrain the breath. And like anything in our bodies, we can retrain with the right input and patience, obviously. And awareness is the start, and that's the acceptance. That's you saying, okay, my breathing isn't great, and I'm suffering from chronic over breathing, and I feel like this is a thing which I need to change. And that's the first step. This is a great one for everyone, regardless of what you're doing. And it's the ability to relax your jaw, reduce the crinkles in your head, relax your shoulders, relax your body. And it's when you're at rest, and if you're on your emails and your boss messages you and you're like, oh, I'm going to get angry now. And it's that ability to breathe slowly, which is hard, always hard sometimes. But it's just the awareness of the face and the neck and how much tension you're holding when you're sat here. So it's as well as the breath, it's also the way you perceive your posture and the way you perceive yourself. Things like mentally repeating phrases, when in doubt, breathe out, lips together, jaw relaxed, breathe low and slow. Awareness of normal breathing rates and rhythms, both at rest and during speech and activity. So if you're doing low activity, like i.e. you're going for a jog, and you historically do the jog quite well, but over the last couple of months, the jog's getting harder, and you don't know why, because your training plan's perfect and you think you're doing all the right things, but you're not looking potentially at the breath more in isolation. And I think this is a big one. I trained a guy who's a computer programmer and a quite high level CrossFitter in America for a short time. And I did the Bolt School with him, and he was talking through his diary, and he was, 5 times a week, and he was healthy, and he's had his nutrition on point. He had his loads were on point, and he couldn't really understand why he wasn't making any physiological gains or any adaptation. And one of the big things was that his breath was not great, and he scored about 5 on the Bolt School. So that was a massive argument for me, actually, to also believe that just because you're physically fit doesn't mean that you are physically fit inside even. And then when you breathe, it's this aquatic breathing, or this letting the rib cage really expand that way, and trying to be aware of this as well, that you're not breathing vertically. It's this horizontal breath. Some things which we might have a bit of time, hopefully at the end we can do some breathing together. And these are things you can practice in your own time. Box breathing, and it's been a game changer, actually. And box breathing was developed by the Navy SEALs in extreme periods of stress. And it's very simple. So I'll just show you on the right. So you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold the breath for 4, out for 4, hold for 4, and you do 4 points. And you can play around with this. So if it's hard to hold your breath for 4 seconds, you can do 2 seconds or 3 seconds. If you're okay with that, you can play around with it, and you can extend the holds, extend the exhales, etc. And it's just a really simple way, again, to get into the parasympathetic branch of your nervous system, which is the rest and digest branch. This is one which I spoke about to improve your relationship with carbon dioxide. It's the breath, hold, walk in strategy or protocol. So you do 5 nasal breaths, 5 times. On the 5th, you breathe in and you hold your breath, and you walk for as long as you comfortably can. When you feel the urge to breathe, you don't open your mouth, you go back into the 5 breaths. And it's important that you don't go maximal at the start, so you gas out and you have to go like that. You go into that kind of 7 to 8 perceptual discomfort, and then you're just going to go back into it again. And the top score is 60, which is mental. I think when I started this, I was about 20. So it's a great one to do if you're going for your daily walk, go down the shops, and you're kind of sneaking in some anaerobic threshold training from just doing this. And I think it's a great little one to do. Obviously, if you found this okay, you can do this in anything. You can do this in a bike or a cycle or a run, or any kind of physical activity which you believe you can maintain the same cadence at. And then this is a nice one to do 4-7-8 breathing, which is a relaxation breath practice, which you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 7, and then you use the mouth on this one to exhale for 8. Again, it's quite hard to exhale for 8, so you can play around with that. You might start at 5 and 6, then you can slowly work up. Coherent breathing, it's just 6 in and 6 out. Cadence breathing is 4 seconds in and 6 out. So, these are people who've been given these names, and you can create your own breath practice. And I think the more you become educated on yourself, you can develop your own way again, and I think it's a really nice one to do. I think, start with the box breathing, start with the breath hold walks, and just do a little mixture of both. The most important thing is that we're taking time to have a break from life, because when you breathe slowly and you're focused on your breath, you forget about the outside world, or you start to dissolve from the outside world. And this is a really important part, to take yourself out of the fight and flight reflex, which so many of us are in because of this, especially during the situation where I think we are very conditioned to be highly stressed a lot. So the breath is such a transformative practice to get out of that state. The breath in a nutshell, so nasal breathing utilizes the lower lobes to increase O2 uptake. So the lobes of your lungs are quite skinny here, and they're quite dense here. So in order to get the air down there, we have to nasal breathe. Breathing helps control emotional reactivity, regulates behavioral patterns. Changing can take between 6 to 8 weeks, depending on your history or the stress of your body, or etc. So everyone's different, but around 6 to 8 weeks, you'd expect to see someone's breathing mechanics start to change for the better. Remind others that retraining the breath can be uncomfortable and unnatural, and be prepared for transient feelings of discomfort. So especially if someone's had COPD or diabetes or asthma, trying to get them to breathe differently straight away is like a new training program. It's going to be hard. So it's little steps. We spoke a lot about the stress and fight or flight reset. And if you breathe fast, the mind will become agitated. If you breathe slow, the mind will calm down. And it's very, very much as simple as that. I'm just going to go straight into the flexibility and a bit more on this very, very powerful subject. A subject which has had a lot of attention, I think, on social media, especially the last sort of 5 to 10 years, and for good reason, definitely. And I think it's like anything, it becomes fashionable, it becomes slightly faddy with some people, and they do it and they don't do it. But flexibility for me personally is a way of life, and it's not, again, about doing the splits. It's not about doing these snapshot things for people to see. It's about me feeling more de-stressed, and this is such a powerful way from, I'm going to talk about more of the physiological side and the physics side of it, but from the emotional side of flexibility, it's hugely profound. And it's again, like the breath for me, it's transformative because it enables your body to deal with stressful situations and learn to relax. So when you're in your end range hip flexor stretch or your hamstring stretch, it does get tough and life is tough. And I think it teaches you to deal with stress in these positions. So the physics definition defines flexibility as not just passive lengthening of tissues. And I think this is a big thing where through courses like FRC, or if you don't know what FRC is, it's functional range conditioning, have a big play on this because they heavily said and reiterated that flexibility is solely passive or has been solely passive, and using yoga as a reference. And this is slightly unfair anyway. So it's not just passive, which you'll learn hopefully more from me tonight about flexibility. It's the capacity of the joints to move. Range of motion is how much an object can change in space or in a position. And more accurately, we are examining the bone which is connected to the joint. We are assessing the movement at the joint itself. Flexibility is the ability to move the joints and the bones attached to them. Range of motion is the most common way for the joint to be measured using numbers, quantified by numbers or data. Quantitative data can be used to measure range of motion, which means the motion's value can be expressed throughout numbers. Motion is the physical change of an object from one point in space to another. A goniometer is a measuring device which you can measure accurately joint angles and range of motion. Flexibility as a motor ability. So like all our other amazing motor abilities, endurance, strength, balance, etc., flexibility is the overarching ability, and flexibility is the key to all other motor abilities. You can only express and develop your current motor abilities within your current limits of flexibility. So if you have this much flexibility, your strength, your power, your balance are all going to be dictated by the amount of range of motion and flexibility you have at every single joint. And that's why it's vitally important not to attain the classic splits, bridges. It's within yourself feel flexible, and your training and your life will completely change. And the better quality of your flexibility training, the better quality of all your other training. Flexibility is present in every aspect of movement. You can't escape it. All the other motor abilities live in the shadow of flexibility. Flexibility is a capacity to move your joints. It dictates where you can put your various body parts, which in turn dictates to what extent you can display and demonstrate the other motor abilities. So it really is it's the overarching pillar for all the other motor abilities, and it's not given nowhere near enough respect at all, because people think that it's passive and that it's yoga and that it's that I can't do it because I'm not flexible, and it's this a resistant approach which we've conditioned our society to believe, which is completely ridiculous in my opinion, because it's such an important part for everybody to have in their toolbox system. I've just kind of said that, but all the other motor abilities are dictated by your flexibility and the range of motion itself. So just to try and hopefully make it a little bit simple as well, because I think with courses like FRC and fascial stretch courses, and you'll hear names like PNF, Contract Relax or CRAC, MET, Muscle Energy Technique, FRC have got Pails and Rails, they've got end range hovers. This is all lots of acronyms which aren't really helping a wider audience understand what is going on. So whenever you're looking at a movement or you're doing a movement yourself, there's two simple questions. Is the joint moving? Is there voluntary contraction? And if you look at the top left picture, that's me on my back, and I'm doing a straddle or a hip opening exercise, and I'm moving my legs, which you can't see, in and out like that. So the joint is moving, so that makes it dynamic, and I'm actively having to contract my my hip abductors to allow my hip to come in, and then adduct to come back in, and that's an active movement because I'm voluntary having to do that. Someone else could describe that as mobility, which it can also cross into. If we're talking the definitions of flexibility, that is what you would best describe that as. Coming on to the right, I've got my leg out like a ninja, trying to be a ninja. And that is an example of a static, the joint is static, and an active hold. In other language, you might see that could be an end range hold. It's just a static, active flexibility exercise or display of flexibility. The bottom left is what you would probably most commonly occur in massage or a therapist, or you're having some treatment done, and it's not under your voluntary control, but the movement is still in motion. So the movement's dynamic, but there isn't any voluntary control. And it's really, this would be an example, which I'll come on to, of osteokinematics, which is the movement within the joint capsule itself. The bottom right one is me just chilling on the floor. So I'm using no tension, I'm just allowing gravity, our best friend, to just allow me to sit there, and it's static. So there's no movement in my joints, and I'm passively there. So you could say that's a static passive flexibility stretch. And every single exercise we do is an example more commonly of dynamic active flexibility, because we are actively having to purposely, intentfully reach for something or hold for something or contract our muscles. Mobility, which again, it's a widely spread term, which is, again, has caused confusion. And I think, and unfortunately, that course, FRC, has caused a lot of confusion. I did the course, by the way, years ago. It's not a bad course whatsoever. It was an enlightening course for me because it got me onto this journey, which I'm very thankful for. But it's also caused a huge amount of confusion. So mobility refers to the body's ability to move through space from one point to another. So you think mobility aids efficiently and without assistance. Whenever you see the phrase mobility exercise, mobility drill, mobility flow, or mobilization, these are used almost exclusively, I can't say that word, as another way of saying dynamic active stretching or dynamic active flexibility, because you're dynamically moving your body, the joints are moving under your voluntary control, and it's that simple. The idea that mobility refers to joint range of motion is a flawed one, especially in the literature. The word rarely refers to the joints, it is referred to the whole body. So it's your overall sum or your overall motor abilities to move from point A to point B. When it is referred to the joint solely as joint mobility, as I mentioned, it's arthrokinematics, and that's the movements within the joint. The accessory passive motions within the joint capsule, which we cannot see or control, refers to the degrees of freedom, and that's not how much the joint can move, it's how many movements it's got. So if you take the hip, the ball, which sits inside the acetabulum or the cup, it should be able to glide, spin, rotate, abduct. So that's the degrees of freedom. It's not how much the actual joint can move. And like I said, every single exercise you see, everything is an example of dynamic active flexibility. So factors which can affect flexibility. So we've got internal versus external. Internal is anything within the body, anything related to the body itself and the matter. External is anything outside the body or anything related to the three-dimensional space your body moves in. So internal factors, so as we age, collagen especially changes around your 40s, and if you have a 180-degree split when you're 30, and say I'll use myself as an example, so I can almost do the splits when I'm training quite hard. I have to do it maybe sometimes three times a week, sometimes depending on how my body is. The more you're older, you can still attain your flexibility. You can still stay flexible, but the amount you'll have to do it have to increase. So when I get older, if I want to keep doing the splits, I'll have to keep my I have to increase the amount of volume I do to kind of offset that. So as collagen changes and the nervous system changes, you have to increase the volume as you get older. You don't lose range of motion. And again, another really frustrating thing, especially for me in my experience with coaching, is that you'll start with a new client and they'll say, I'm too old, I can't get flexible. And it's just a really frustrating point of view, because people think because you don't stretch and you never stretch that you can't be flexible. And of course, everyone can be flexible if you have the right inputs. Hormones, so the endocrine system, will all influence on your training inputs. Any pathologies, so diseases or mechanical injuries, will all impact the person's ability to complete meaningful training inputs. Disabilities will all affect flexibility. And then external factors, training in a cold climate, in a cold temperature will affect your tissue, so it become less malleable or less pliable. So when you train, if you want to really maximize your flexibility training, try and do it in a warmish environment. And obviously first thing in the morning is going to be quite tough because you're going to be quite cold. Your body temperature is not very high as well. Circadian variation is quite an interesting one. So if you sleep around 10 to sort of 6 or 8 the next day, a really good time to do all your training is between 6 and 6:30. That's when you're at your most heightened. That's when your position around the earth and the sun is at you're at your most peak in terms of your focus, and you're also, your muscle and your tissue is at its most malleable. So it's at its most softest point around 2 to 6:30. This is obviously going to be individual to yourselves, and again, this comes down to practice and when to train it. Obviously, we all don't have the luxury of training at these times, but I think it's always a nice one not to beat yourself up if you're training in the morning or too late at night and you're not feeling great, because that's not really when you should be training as such in terms of flexibility. And it's been proven to show that strength training and in that period is also very effective. And I think this is just personal. So some people will argue and say, well, I'm actually great in the morning. Well, that's brilliant. So there's no argument to that. But again, it's trial and error for yourself. The equipment you have will obviously affect your flexibility. So flexibility is very reliant on strength. And one of the most fastest ways to become more flexible is to use isometric strength training. And that's the ability to contract your tissue very, very hard and then relax. Again, it's just contract, relax, or PAILS, rails, or whatever acronym you want to use. It's contracting the tissue at a certain point, and it's using a maximum velocity scale. So out of 10 being like I'm about to feel like my hamstring is going to leave my body, 0 being like I've got no tension. And you can use the MVC to scale your isometrics. So you might do the first set at like 70%, like a strength training set. You wouldn't go and do a deadlift set on like 100 kilos for a warm up, but you would do the barbell first, you would do some accessory work, you build up to the end, you build up to the higher lows. And it's the same with flexibility, because it's stress management on the body, and it's slowly layering the MVC, which you can use as a coach and you can use personally to monitor your loads. So I'm going to talk a bit more about loads anyway, but it's the fastest way to get more flexible, and that's to use a combination of passive, so static passive, and dynamic active, and dynamic static active. And the combination of those three, for me personally, has been the most effective. And I think everyone's very different. So if I danced all my life and I did no rugby and I was very, very flexible, then if I was coaching myself, I wouldn't coach myself to do lots of passive stretching, because I'm very, very flexible. So I would give myself more active isometric work. If I've done weight training my whole life, I've sat at a desk every single day and I've got neck pain, adding more stress through isometrics, which is whole body tension work, then it's probably not going to work. I need to have a more softer approach that's going to be more passive. So it's very much dependent. Some people can also have more mobile joints and more areas of their body which are more flexible. Therefore, different areas of the body would need different inputs. So if their back is very, very stiff, then they might need more passive stretching. But if their hips are really, really mobile, then they might need some more active work in their hips. So it's again, everyone's so different. That's why it's such a cool thing to coach, because it's so individual to that person. And just the psychological setting. So how you mentally are in tune, I guess, for yourself as an internal thing anyway, but externally, the environment you're in, I think, is important. Do you feel, especially with stretching, you have to feel like you're in a relaxed environment, whether that's in a gym space, but you've got your headphones in and you feel quite zen, but doing it in busy environments, it's just stress again. So you're trying to remove the stress as much as possible. Load and cycles. So the intensity is how hard you work, and volume is how much work you do. And regardless of whether you're doing coaching flexibility or it doesn't matter. These two factors will dictate to how well your body progresses, and they're crucial. So these two components, they will be the make or break of your progression. That's as simple as that. Positive adaptations, the body gets stronger, you get more efficient, your capacities increase, your tolerance to training increases, your performance improves. Negative adaptations, a person cannot handle demands on the body, which results in fatigue, overtraining, and all the things which come along with that: irritability, poor loss of diet, poor sleep, etc. So load, we have stimulating loads, so those that exceed the body's current tolerances. So that's pushing our body up to the next level. Retraining loads are equal to the body's current load tolerances. Amounts of load a client does not change. So these would be sort of maintenance loads. So if you're doing sort of 5 sets of 5 for a certain period of time on the same weight, you're not really looking to increase much strength. You're just looking to maintain. That would be your kind of average load. Just as obviously one example. A detraining load would be specifically putting in lower loads for recovery, for physiological adaptations to take place. When a new adaptation takes place, the once stimulating load now becomes the maintenance load. Then eventually deloading loads then will change as well. So understanding your own load is important, and a simple way to do this is to do a training diary, and to look at your goals and look at if you're achieving your goals, and look at how much load you're also enduring. In a really simple way I try and get my clients to do is to do some simple scores out of 5. So they'll do like their sleep out of 5 every day. They'll do their nutrition out of 5 every day. They'll do their stress out of 5 every day. They'll do their soreness out of 5 every day. And then I'll get them to do that every day. And then we'll look back on the month or the 6 weeks and we'll say, did we achieve the goal we wanted? Yes or no? Okay, let's look at your weeks, and then we'll look at like two of the weeks you were like in the 4s and 5s. Sleep was bad, work was real stressful, diet was really poor, wasn't recovering. Okay, so now we can build a bigger picture that you don't beat yourself up that it wasn't the training program, it wasn't the inputs, it was actually the wider, again, going back to the more wholesome approach to life and training, is that it's not one thing. It's never just one thing. So it's the more we can be more holistic with our viewpoint, especially when we're trying to achieve quite hard things with the body, we need to take into everything to account. So overtraining, and I think we've all been guilty of this. I was definitely guilty of this as a rugby player. God, I trained so much. I was 10 kilos heavier trying to lose weight, and I couldn't lose weight, but I was doing loads of training. I was under eating on the yo-yo diets, and I was like, what's going on? I was like, I'm under eating, so I should be losing food because I'm in a calorie deficit, and I'm doing loads of training, so I'm burning more calories. But it's this psychology that we believe is always right, and it's not. And it's the more stress we give our bodies, the more inflammation we have. And a really simple one to do for inflammation is to just, if you can touch your tissue and it's tight 2 days after a session, so you've done training on Monday and you're still sore on a Thursday, training again, even stretching is load. So you need to really look at, was that session worth going that hard for me to still be sore on Thursday? And yes, there are peaks that you have to push into, but the rest is as not, if not more important than the training itself. So acute overtraining signs, decreased range of motion following training, increased stiffness, soreness, what I've just mentioned, especially the palpable soreness, lack of energy, chronic overtraining, low energy, chronic inflammation, no desire to train, self-doubt, soreness, physically weak and injured. And then the greater the training load, the more, the greater the training load, meaning the more intense the exercise, the longer it's done for, and the greater the physiological stress and the bigger decrease in the body's energy reserves. So it's very simple. The more we do, the more we're going to get stressed. And as a coach and as a human, it's very, very important that we're managing stress, physical, mental stress, life stress, as much as we can, and doing self-care, such as breathing, meditating, being in nature more, having a laugh more as well, and just not taking life too seriously, going into this not a stress state. And the more we can go into that, because life's hard enough as it is and training is hard enough as it is, we can become more of a fluid mover, and we can start to enjoy what we're doing. And for me personally, I think people asking me, oh, how much you train? And you must do loads, and I actually don't. I train every day, but it's not high level. It's never too much or it's never too little. And there are times where I go, right, I want to learn something for this next 6 weeks. I want to learn this move or blah, blah, blah. And I'll need to put a little plan together for myself. But if I'm not, and I'm in that maintain mode or vibe, then I'll just be like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, bit of stretching, some weight training, some cardio, some skipping. And that's just the way I try to just manage myself, because for me, I'm still recovering, I think, from rugby still. Like, it really took it out on me mentally, and it was hard, and it was physically hard and mentally hard. So the last thing I'm really cautious of now is stress, and it's high level stress, and that's from just being more aware. So when you're wanting to modify your load, so we can use modification almost always, because the exercise initially is either too hard or it's too easy. So the obviously simple things we can do, especially with flexibility, is to increase the range of motion or decrease is a safe way to manage the load. So if you're in a side split and you want to make it harder, obviously you're trying to take your feet wider and bring them in to make it easier. Again, it's the kind of thing with the load and decrease the lever length or the body segment. So if you're in a middle split and you're getting medial knee pain, which is quite common, then you would go into the frog stretch, for example, and this is a bit of physics, but you're trying to reduce the moment arm, and you're trying to reduce the angle from the joint itself. And it's a really good way because you can still stretch the area. So in this example, the side split would be the adductor focus. You can reduce the range. So even if you can't hold the middle split because you're in pain through the knees, you can go onto the frog stretch. So you can reduce the lever itself. Speed, you can use speed and velocity to increase the difficulty and decrease. So slowing things down makes things easier. So lowered metabolic cost, less coordination required from the central nervous system, and less force traveling through the lengthening tissues. We shouldn't slow down movement so much, it becomes so difficult. So again, it's going back to CARs and FRC, and they're quite dynamic, active exercises. And even for a beginner to produce that much intra force, or it's called the law of the radiation, or Sheridan's law, which means you have to ramp up your MVC, or your maximum voluntary contraction, quite high to provide your body with enough stimulus to change. Then it's quite hard as a beginner. So it's to be aware of that as well, and slowing things down without huge amounts of active tension is a good way to feel the movement. So you don't always have to be in a really stressed state when you're doing mobility. You have to do a softness side to it with the passive, incorporate some isometrics, maybe some speed work, increase the range of motion. And it's this constant tinkering or balanced approach to flexibility training and movement training. So summary of coaching flexibility. So individual anatomy is the main reason why people progress at different rates. This includes such factors as the shape and depth of joints. So people with shallower hips sockets, for example, will find movement slightly easier. And the hip's quite an interesting one. You can have like what's called a cam deformity. You can have coxavara or coxavagus, which is where the neck or the shaft of the femur is slightly different. You might like see someone's hip slightly like almost tilted to the side, or it's like a bony prominence. And these are all really someone's individual makeup, or whether they've done a particular activity or it's through a certain condition or a leg discrepancy. So when you're coaching flexibility, it's very important to be aware of this. And certain positions, that's why yoga can be challenging, because it's driven around a particular type of pose, and it's not anatomically viable for everyone to get into those positions. When you're coaching it also for yourself, especially with end range work and doing things like the side split or more flexibility training, or if you're coaching it, your client's perception of discomfort is always right. So if they say it's too much, it probably is too much, but it's getting them to understand what's pain and what isn't. I think using the MVC or score out of 10 or RPE or things like that to gauge the intensity and gauge how they feel is important. There is no absolute rule to how someone performs an exercise. Biomechanics is a set of guidelines that guides us on how to tailor exercise based on someone's ability or anatomy. And I think with the power of social media, we have this high volume of information. And for me, looking at who I follow in their flexibility work, it's very, very, very cool that people are wanting to put out all this information, including myself. But I think even myself as a consumer, it's overwhelming. And the exercises themselves, more often than not, are a variation on a variation. And I think we can become so consumed with the exercise itself, we actually detract ourselves from what is the primary goal of the exercise, or what's the primary goal of the position the person's in. And I think you can do a certain movement about 25 times, and I've done the same because it's fun and it's variable. But I don't think if you're starting out, especially as a beginner with flexibility, you should become overwhelmed by this. And the very, very basics of stretching is important. And some good guidelines for stretching are things like, if you're going to do a passive stretch that's in one position, you're wanting to hold that position for around 2 minutes. So you can use things like contrast breathing, which is 2 seconds in through the nose, 3 seconds out. And if you're doing isometrics or you're doing static active holds, you're looking at around 10 to 15 seconds per hold, 4 to 5 sets, like a strength set. And then you can increase the intensity within that. So using passive and using active together, like the yin and yang, is a really powerful way to get the most out of flexibility training, and obviously movement training itself, because flexibility is heavily strength reliant. Phenomenology is the philosophical study of the structures of experience and consciousness. And this is a cool thing, because I think as a coach, there isn't a right or wrong way to, spinal. I think I'm almost done now, that as a coach, there isn't a right or wrong way to do anything. And I think if you have the principles in place and you go through the process, I think yourself's important before you coach. Sometimes you can feel how it feels to go through a training program. And like anything, if you want to achieve anything with flexibility, you have to record this, you have to put it down, and it has to be a programmed approach. Is doing a randomized thing to trying to get different positions is hard. And again, it's always consistency over intensity. And I think that was it. And thank you for listening. Any questions are welcome. I can stop talking now. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Ollie. Really appreciate that. It was awesome. I'm sure everybody enjoyed it and got a lot from it. Do you want to let everybody know where they can find out a bit more about you and about the stuff you do? Because I know I kind of follow you on the app that you've got.
Yeah,
and I know
sure.
there's various other bits and pieces you do as well.
Yeah. On so what I'm this is my baby. So the human program is where my energy is going to go for, hopefully for the rest of my life. So I'm going to be moving away from one-to-one coaching, hopefully in the next couple of years as a plan. And this is a way I think that I can give back more to the world in a broader sense. So one-to-one's obviously quite constricted because it's very focused on the hour itself, but the human program is a way which is a way to really get the message out in terms of how to be more human and to talk about the things I've done. So definitely follow the human program if you can. And we're posting a blend of things at the moment. So sort of lifestyle based, movement based, breathwork based as the pillars. And then when this all calms down, if you guys are based in London, we're going to do a in-person retreat in Surrey on a farm, and that's going to be every Saturday, and it's going to be hot, cold therapy, movement, meditation, some balance, and it's going to be a place where to kind of disconnect from the world and come down in it and enjoy that kind of sides of it. Me still doing what I'm doing though. Still, I'm available to coach online, and Fleur's done my online coaching for a long time, and that's been really cool because obviously I wouldn't have connected with Fleur before. So I use a program called True Coach, and that's all one-to-one on there. And then, like you said, James, I've got the app as well, which has got loads of exercises on there, which is a way to kind of put what I spoke about today into practice as well. And then obviously you can follow what I'm up to on Instagram, and that's pretty much it really. Yeah, but if there's any more questions, guys, I'd love to hear or be asked. Or
Hey Ollie, thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's really, really interesting. I am a meditation teacher, and I've not ever done any direct sort of just breathwork training. I've trained with lots of people who do specialize in breathwork, and I've done like mindfulness breathwork, but I'm just really keen to know where you did your training and what inspired you to do it as well on the breath.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, I've actually done no formal training myself. It's just all been self-taught. So I've read lots of books. I'm very self-read, to be honest. And I think when I moved to the physio practice 3 years ago, I was around lots of practitioners, osteos and chiropractors. And I think that's when I started to realize that there is more to this than just like just the exercise itself, and the mind and how the connection is so important. And the breath started to become apparent, and actually someone at Balance just started to speak to me about the breath, and I was like, I don't understand. I was like, what's breath about? What's this thing? Like, it's cool. And then I got into it, and I felt myself change. Like I felt myself change from breathing. I was like, this is crazy. I was like, I'm seeing and feeling like a different person within myself. And this is all from having more breath control. And people I can recommend looking into is definitely Patrick McCowan. He's got a great book. And also this guy, James Nestor. This guy's really cool.
I've heard really about him.
James Nestor, Patrick McCowan, a guy in America who I actually spoke to last summer. He's a bit crazy, but he's good to follow, called Brian McKenzie. And he's got a really high level performance based breathwork business. He's quite interesting as well. And they all share the same. Dan Brule as well. And obviously got Wim Hof. So, and then Breather James, you guys follow Breather James? He's amazing. He's just some amazing live free breathwork classes. I guess these are kind of the pioneers at the moment for breathwork on sort of social media, and they post so much information. The HPP Foundation for Breath, also on Instagram, posts an amazing articles of research on breath. And I think the breath is just a way which everyone can do this. I think we started working with a charity, and they're heavily disabled, so they can't do much physical work, but what they can do is breathe. So it's been amazing to do work with them because everyone can have access to the powers of breathing. So that's why I think it's such a cool thing to understand as a coach, also to practice yourself and with others, because everyone can do this, and they can, as you know, can feel the benefits from breathing better.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think breath work can be really transformative. It can almost like rejuvenate cells, and it just can do so much. Like, it's amazing. And I'm keen to know what your opinion is on the Wim Hof method as well.
To be honest with you, I don't know enough to comment, to be honest. I think the Patrick McCowan, the guy who I referenced tonight, he has a viewpoint on it as well. I can't reference what he said about it, but there's I think, again, you'd have to research that differently, but he definitely has a different viewpoint. Again, I think like it's this different versus different, isn't it? I think everyone's information is valuable. And I think that having people like Wim Hof is being an amazing advocate for the industry, because they've got people thinking about environmental conditioning, being in nature more, doing the hot colds, doing breathing. And I think that's a positive, you know. I think it's I think it's powerful, and I think it's really interesting how people are becoming more aware of breathing. It's not just a physical, it's not just your diet or your sleep. It's it's a very interesting subject for sure.
Yeah, it is. You could talk about it for hours.
Good, yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hey, I've got a question, please. First of all, just to everybody else listening, I've been doing the human program with Ollie, as well as training with him mobility-wise for ages, and I highly recommend it. Super interesting. And there's other tutors on there as well, so you learn from loads of other people, so definitely check it out, because I highly recommend. But in terms of like getting into, say, coaching more with movement wise in general, what would you say? Obviously you said about the other course that you did, like what would you recommend for that?
I'm probably gonna say do my course again, like other big one, but I think, do you know what, I think sometimes it's your own journey with it. And I think we can become so like we need to do a course, or we need to do something to do something else. And I think it's sometimes we're programmed that we don't have enough confidence within ourselves to do something. And I think we all have it within us. I think if you're passionate about something and you feel comfortable within yourself to perform that particular subject, there's no reason why you can't coach it more. You know, I think I made the switch properly to coaching movement full time a couple of years ago, or 4 or 5 years ago, and I haven't looked back since. And I'm now thinking about changing it again, because I want to get people moving even differently and being differently now. And my assessment is so different now. It's very much a breath assessment first. It's very much a lifestyle questionnaire first, because if I can't coach someone if they're in a stress state, it's kind of a bit of a bat and ball situation. It's like I need that person to understand themselves before they can start the physical. I mean, in terms of courses, I mean, obviously I mentioned FRC, which is a interesting one. It's a very intense 2-day course, and there's a lot of information on sort of the biology of flexibility. And I've just done Dan, if you follow him on Instagram, Flexibility Research, I've just done his 4-month course on flexibility, and it's very physics driven, and it was fantastic. He's going to be a tutor on, so Fleur's just done a non-accredited course for the human program, and we're going to do a fully accredited course this year, which will be about 4 months, and Dan will take about a month of that. And he's one of the best educators I've ever come across, actually, and he is exceptional. He's actually exceptional, because he's so knowledgeable and so passionate about what he does. That to understand more the flexibility side, you could look into that in Dan's work. That's why I feel like with the human program, we're offering everything. It's not just one thing. And as much as I love flexibility and breath work, there are other things to take into consideration. And so the seminar last night was taken by Tom Farrow, who's the England rugby S&C coach. So I still have a massive interest in S&C and performance, because I think, again, it's another pillar. It's another thing as a coach. You don't need to know the ins and outs of, but you need to be aware of different methods of training. Specifically coaching movement, I think the best thing to do is, if you're not coaching it full time with your clients at the moment, is to start to integrate it slowly. So if they're doing like a back squat, in the rest, get them to do a movement exercise, and then that's the start. Then if they go, I quite enjoy this, then you go, okay, well, what about we try a bit more of this in the session? And then before you know it, you're fully converted. And it's never to say you're not going to do back squats to them, because as I've spoken about, strength training is crucial to flexibility, and they're both interconnected, so there isn't one or the other. And so,
are you just quite adventurous with the movements then, like with all the stuff, like especially stuff on the course that I've learned loads and previously from you? I definitely integrate it more with clients, but it's like, where do you learn how to move like that? Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh God,
adventurous with it, and then you just think of new things. Like,
yeah, I think so. I mean, like I kind of spoke about with the variation thing, it's like, for me, if I see an exercise, I'm thinking like, how many times so take the shoulder, like the shoulder can move so in many different ways. I can do a shoulder circle like 10 times. I can do it with a weight, I can do it with a band, I can do it slowly, I can do it fast. That's 5 variations of one movement. And I think the more you can look at a movement, and then you can go, how do I modify the load, how do I increase the speed, how do I increase the lever length, you can create exercises within exercises. That's why I think movement is just movement in general. It's just like this magical thing we can do with people. And it's a fine line. It's a fine line, because you don't want to overload people, and it causes confusion sometimes. And sometimes habits, postural habits, they get compromised. So I think it's giving people enough stimulus sometimes to be like, oh, this is a bit different, but also not over the top. Like with you, for example, you're a very good mover, so you could really like you can be exposed to different types of movements. For someone, most of my clients, they're very sedentary. They don't do any of the crazy stuff I gave you. They just do very basic stuff. So it's very individual coaching style. And I think it's being adventurous, yeah, being creative, yeah, definitely. Try things on yourself as well. Try different things. Like there isn't a right or wrong way to move.
Yeah, thank you,
Kerry. Oh, what 3 books would you recommend? Okay, I'm going to look for my library. Okay, here we go. This is my little library. Look, going to recommend this one. If you haven't read that one, Sapiens. This author's awesome as well. It's really good. A mind one. This guy is a doctor, and he's really into psychology, human behavior, expansionness of your consciousness rather. And this guy is Playing with Movement. It's like an easy read. Like it's just talks about movement basically. And he's got quite a few books as well. Todd Hargrove, and then maybe a breath book. So maybe a little bit more about the breath. If you want to get really geeky on the breath, like really geeky, this one. This is like the Bible, but this is quite heavy. This is kind of like physio language, but it's still good. And you know, for me personally, I love reading, and I think I've always just enjoyed reading. I'm rubbish at everything else reading wise. I don't want to read anything else. I just like to read this kind of stuff, and it just, I guess if it's your passion, it's okay. I've always enjoyed it. So yeah, get reading and get learning and just get implementing as well, you know. All right, guys, is there any more questions to wrap up? I think we're all done. All talked out, be mouth breathing for 2 hours. Do some nasal breathing now. Thank you very much for joining, James. Thank you so much for setting this up.
Pleasure, mate. It's been awesome having you.
And we great to get you guys. You know, if you're London based, to come and do some work down the farm, and we can do some work together, James, as well. And you know, I think it'd be great to you guys in Brighton.
Yeah, that's right. We're based in Brighton, but we have learners from around the whole of Sussex, really. So
that's cool. You're not far then as well. That'd be good. And yeah, I mean, we're open. We're literally open to every. It sounds cliche, but we're open to everyone. No, we are, seriously. We're not like taking people who are the best or anything like that. It's just open to everyone. You know, that's why we want to work with charities, and you know, people who have disabilities. That's more important to us than working for people who want to do the splits and handstands, to be honest, because that for me is a great goal to have, but it's about helping as many people as we can. And that comes from, I think, just being more open in general. So yeah, by all means come down and we'll do some work together, or however that works out.
Perfect.
Great stuff, guys. Thanks so much for joining. And I'll stop the recording after this, and I'll send you that over, James, as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you, mate.
Great stuff, guys.
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Cheers.
Thank you
Ollie.
very much.
Thank you.
Bye bye.